To know that, you'd have to know that we were an American ship. If you knew we were an American ship, you knew what frequencies we were going to be on because you knew what the fleet frequencies were. Duh! Hello!
The attackers knew their target, but they were keeping their own identity well hidden.
During the attack, no one saw any markings, and some of the men told me later that they made a special effort to identify them, and they swear that there were no markings, that these airplanes were unmarked.
They took out all of our transmitting antennas, and shortly thereafter deposited napalm on the deck. It appeared to me that it was the intent of the attacker to take out all communications and keep all people off deck so they couldn't reestablish any sort of antennas or communication system. If it was an accident, it was the best planned accident I've ever heard of. The only reason we got the SOS out was because my crazy troops were climbing the antenna string and long wires while they were being shot at.
At the end of the air attack, 8 men were dead and 75 injured. But the worst was yet to come.
We immediately cast off our lines and rushed out. I at least didn't know why. The sea was very calm and a bright day. I think it was around midday, or maybe a little before that, but around midday. And only on the way we were told there was a unknown vessel to the south of us, or southwest of us, and we sped over in that direction. Very soon we did see a ship, clearly a naval vessel.
The last thing I remember is the captain on the intercom system saying, "Stand by for torpedo attack, starboard side."
Down below the waterline, the men in the engine room got ready to die.
Torpedo's coming in, it's going to open that boiler up, and you're going to die instantly. It's going to be like an atomic bomb, because that cold water hits that boiler. It's operating at full, there's just no hope. So all of us 19-year-olds, the best place to be is right there. You're going to get it. You're going to give it up right then and there. So torpedo attack, we waited, and they said it went by. And this went on like 4 different times.
The torpedo is simply dropped into the water. You lose sight of it for a minute, and then you see the wake, and it was going straight for the ship, and we were sure that our torpedo was the one that hit.
It hit, and it lifted the ship right out of the water and put it down, and we started to list 10 degrees. But it was a slow list, and it was going. And I said, my God, we're going to flip over.
I was one of the fortunate ones. A temporary bulkhead wrapped itself around me, and the heat of the torpedo exploded all of the paint onto my skin. So I was black, but it was all superficial. Lost both eardrums, got my eyes burnt a little, but I survived. Almost all of the troops within 20 feet of me were killed instantly.
We just went back to work and prayed that this thing was not going to flip over or was going to go down, and it didn't. That's about it for now.
The Liberty was now paralyzed, her power and steering control lost. But her desperate SOS message had been picked up by the American 6th Fleet, 500 miles away off Crete. Retaliation was ordered for the attack. On the USS America, 2 bombers were readied while their fighter escort was launched.
Those aircraft were brought forward, and I believe they were launched before we went into Condition November.
Condition November meant that nuclear-armed A-4 bombers were to be used. Incredibly, the US was about to launch a nuclear strike against Egypt, the Liberty's presumed attacker.
One of them was taxied forward to Cat 1, and it had like a shroud around the underside of the fuselage, and it had Marine guards escorting the A4. So that was a very unusual experience. I've never seen anything like that.
There was a flash message, as I recall, from one of the carriers that said they had launched ready aircraft. The launching of ready aircraft, you understand, that is typically nuclear-armed aircraft.
Cairo was about to be incinerated. The U.S. Embassy was told that an attack was coming. Richard Parker was the political consul.
There was this message that the Navy was preparing to retaliate against Egypt for the attack on the Liberty. They thought that it was the Egyptians who attacked it. They were preparing to attack Egypt in response.
A few minutes later, Tony Hart passed a Pentagon message through to the Navy. Recall the aircraft.
My first thought was, well, we don't want to do mushroom clouds. The recall probably is to rearm the aircraft.
About 10 minutes later, the USS America and Washington were connected by voice link. The Defense Secretary himself came on the line.
McNamara directed COM 6 Fleet to recall the aircraft, and COM 6 Fleet said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Absolutely certain. Recall the aircraft."
The attack on the Liberty had triggered an extraordinary response. Nuclear-armed planes had been on their way to Cairo. A nuclear strike had been minutes away and had only just been averted. But it seems McNamara was also unwilling to send aircraft directly to help the Liberty. The fleet commander asked for permission to send a rescue flight of conventionally armed aircraft.
The admiral was talking to McNamara and asking for permission to relaunch the ready aircraft, relaunch any aircraft. And McNamara said no, that no aircraft were to be launched. McNamara is the boss, you know. He doesn't have to explain why he says what he says.
Dave Lewis heard from another officer about McNamara's dealings with the 6th Fleet.
I'm Admiral Larry Geis, the commander of Task Force 60.
He was very upset. He told me he knew it was going to be hushed up, and I wasn't to say anything about it, but he had to get it off his chest. That he had sent aircraft and notified Washington, obviously via the Criticom network, because it got to Bob McNamara and Lyndon Johnson, and he had the aircraft recalled by Robert McNamara. So he said he reconfigured a flight of aircraft with aircraft incapable of carrying nuclear weaponry and relaunched it. He again notified Washington. Again, Robert McNamara ordered the aircraft recalled. He challenged the order, and Lyndon Johnson came on. He said he didn't give a damn if the ship sunk. He would not embarrass his allies.
Robert McNamara has never fully discussed his role in the Liberty controversy.
You recalled planes sent to rescue the Liberty.
I'm absolutely certain that's false.
You didn't send a signal to the 6th Fleet?
Absolutely not. I don't know what the hell happened, and I haven't taken time to find out. But there are all of these claims that we sent planes, the planes were going out and then we turned them around, and that we intentionally allowed the Israelis to sink the Liberty. I know nothing about it.
While the 6th Fleet was launching and recalling its aircraft, the Liberty was still under attack by the Israeli torpedo boats.
You could see these machine gun bullets going through and ricocheting off all the metal that was down there. And actually, some were going into the boiler. They're trying to explode the boiler, and they knew what they were doing.
We basically were dead in the water. The word came down, prepare to abandon ship. That meant prepare only, go up and get ready, get near the life rafts. Well, I went up first, popped the hatch, looked out for the life rafts. They were either gone or burning. And at the same moment, I looked to the stern of the ship, and I saw one of the torpedo boats methodically machine gunning one of our life rafts that had floated back. We cut the life rafts loose because they were burning or had been damaged. And they floated back behind us, and he was machine gunning the life raft. And I knew